Oh God. I'm scared. So Mindy, you want to talk to us a little bit about this?
Yeah, we're going to take this off though, because they're just going to keep arguing.
Okay.
She's pretty obnoxious.
Is that me?
No.
That was going to be a good argument.
It's not a stereo, too. She's like, it's my stereo, I paid for it. But, I wanted to do something. I was talking with Stephanie at the beginning of the project, and she was telling me I should do something that was from my culture, but honestly, like, I don't really have. I mean, I have a culture, everybody has a culture because you live life and you have an experience in life, but I don't have a typical culture. My family is from two totally different backgrounds. My mom is like mulatto, my dad's 100% Puerto Rican, and when they got together, they just kind of like threw it out the window, and they raised us, and we basically just, my sister and I, my sister and I weren't allowed to like go to friends' houses most of the time. We weren't allowed to do a lot of stuff, so everything that we did was like in our house, and we moved a lot because my parents also were incredibly irresponsible and selfish, and they got married to each other. They had 2 kids. They got divorced. And 10 years later, they got remarried to each other again, had 2 more kids, and got divorced again. And between all of that marrying and divorcing and child having and everything, we moved like 18 times before I graduated. Wow. So, in thinking about my own culture, I was thinking about being basically a homebody, like having that environment, and then how it never really changed, even though we moved from house to house to house. The whole environment pretty much stayed the same, even though, I mean, how can you say that it stays the same when you have, like, divorce with your child and having and everything? But, like, it was. Like, strangely enough, even though there were changes, it was still the same. So the idea was to have a static interior of a house, and then having the different exteriors in moving box form, so that it is supposed to like signify the actual moving process. And originally I was going to do kind of like an abstract story about this nomadic family, but I didn't think my family could live off to something that was interesting enough. Like honestly, I tried to put something together and it just wasn't working out. Mm-hmm. So instead what I did was I thought of each of these houses represents a house that I actually lived in. And I thought of the houses themselves and my most prominent and first memory or experience in those houses. And then got sounds for it. So the rocking chair was, in that house, my younger brothers were like 2 and 3, and every night someone would read them a story. So, and it was in my mom's rocking chair, so if it was my mom or my sister or my dad or I, every night someone would read them a story in the rocking chair. The yelling was the last house that I lived in with my mom, where I had moved upstate and I came back home to live at home with my parents, dad, and stuff. And she had moved out of the house that I grew up in into this other house, and my brothers were like becoming preteens, and everything was an argument. Like I came home and it was like a war zone. I'm like, oh my goodness. So that was the argument. I had the violin music. There's 2 things in that house. I really got into musicals and singing, and like when I graduated high school, I wanted to be on Broadway, so that was my whole big thing. And also, that was the house that my sister moved out and went to college, and I had to start like hanging out on my own instead of always having her being like a couch potato buddy. And I started basically like hibernating in my room, and I took all my parents' old 33 RPM records of classical music that they had from back in the day and started listening to classical music. And what's the other one? Oh, the kid laughing was when my second brother was born, my youngest brother. My parents were like just getting back together. We moved out of this crap apartment into this nice huge house, had like all this this room and all this space, everybody was like really, really happy. So it was always like children's laughter in the house. It was just, everybody was really chill for once.
So, Maggie, I don't know if you can tell us, you probably can't tell us you're not a musician, but how did you do it? You didn't do motion center, did you? There's something at the top of it? Show it through? The little,
You know when you buy clothes or try to see clothes?
that little tag. Yeah, it's an electronic sensor.
It's an RFID tag. So inside, I'll actually lift it up and show you guys. Inside the box, I have a wave shield and an RFID shield. So this big long thing is the RFID.
Yeah.
And it can write and read also. And basically, all I had to do was I got the 4 tags, and each tag has an individual number. It's a unique ID. So I just had to read the number and say if you're reading a tag and it's this number, play this sound file. And that was pretty much it. I also, which I forgot to talk about, last night, added the LED, which I figured would be a nice little addition instead of just having this like dark house. It kind of like pulsates so that when you put the house on, the house comes to light. So that was
Awesome. So, notice before you guys start talking to a number of things that she said. Like, I like the idea. Well, first of all, if you want to go to graduate school at all, you should be building a portfolio, like a solid hardcore portfolio that can be continued, which is one of the things we've been talking about, right? Notice how she translated culture, right? Which is really good, because culture is, like, culture is. But you kind of feature your story. It's a good place to start only because it allows you, and in where you're investing, you can see she's just invested an awful lot of a kind of personal story, which allows you to kind of go through the steps to make the thing, right? And we should give her props for 2 things. So for her to getting it together and making it work and got it together. Plus, she's given us a lot of stuff. Like, she just gave us a lot of stuff. She's trying to do a lot of things to give us. So, first of all, and then she kind of put this thing together and there's these things. So let's talk about the thing that she's kind of, some of the stuff she told us, but the way that it's communicating to us as viewers, right? Because one of the things that I think works here is that we could have given us all that back information, but I don't think really, because it functions in the way that we get, or we can take those and maybe we'll get some of your stuff, but we all have things attached to that, so it's like a way for us to kind of take our story. So what do you guys think about it? Tell us things.
I like how instead of like each house making its own separate noise, independent of the central box, I like how you can like move the boxes on top of it to get it to work. And I like all the metaphorical examples that you incorporated. So it's like, the house is supposed to be a box, it's a moving box with a handle, signifies the moving, but each house signifies the home you've been in. So I like all the metaphorical representations, and I think it's an overall very cool project. I feel like the houses could have been decorated a little bit more. That's like, it's like the only.
Yeah. Yeah, like raw, like these are interesting considerations to start thinking about. Like the raw, like almost raw. We've got a lot going on. Let's talk a little bit more before I start now. What else?
You really do get a feeling of history and past, and moving. First of all, it's moving boxes. You have to move the boxes to relive the past, and that is something good.
Thinking about like a larger scale, I'm thinking that would be really cool if it was huge installation and like huge room, and like the houses would set up like little mini actual houses, like panels and everything that looked like little houses. And if people like walked in and like had to take a certain tag that worked in the house, but they had to like try out each house to see like which one it worked with, and then once they did, like they got this sort of metaphor from there. So like I think this would be a really cool thing on like a big scale. I think it would look really cool too. Pardon? Yeah. Anything else?
I really like you paid attention to detail, even like with the front stoop, like even how good like crown molding and everything like that was such a pain.
That took the longest. The molding was like
Yeah, the double cut.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
the one closest to me is a little bit.
Yeah.
So now, no. So now, what I was just about to say is now we've been nice to Mindy, which is good. And we're telling her we like what she's done really well. We know she has great things, right? So now we need to be a little mean to Mindy. And being mean to Mindy is loving Mindy. I'm not even kidding. Right? And so what do you see that could be changed different? So we've had like the idea of blowing it up. There are some things like she's built all these things nicely. There are little things like the grass, which I will call the grass on the thing, where it's bubbling up a little bit. You know, the little corners where it's not horrible. It could be better, right? So we want it to be better. And it's going to function really well.
I had moss that I was going to use as grass. I got like sheet moss, but when I put it on, it looked like this horrible like patchwork monstrosity. And there was like no, it was like dirt on the bottom. There's no way to.
Oh,
I did. If I had more time, I would actually make the top recess and plant grass, like actual grass.
Well, and now let's think about that. Because think about the nightmare of repaying that.
Grass grows pretty
If you
easily.
sold it to a museum,
Well, then
the
they'd have to
museum is
break
then like, okay, how are we gonna grow this grass all the time? This thing, yeah, I don't think we want this. You know what I mean? But like these are all like longer term considerations. So we had comments about some of the ways that it's put together in decoration. I'm like a little up in the air because some of like this one feels a little disheveled to me, but it feels a little disheveled in the kind of what do they call those people? Yeah. On purpose, right?
Well, that's part of it too. Like, I was putting this together, and I had really, really high aspirations for the houses, like the actual construction of the houses. The idea was that the interior would be like bland and white and blank, and then the houses would be like really elaborate. But as I worked on them and thought more about the houses that I lived in, like we were always in rentals, and we were poor. Like our rentals were crap. So like this. I was gonna fix all of the trim that's crooked and everything, and then I was like, you know what though? Our houses were crap.
Okay, so she's like, okay, the perfection wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like it's all stuff.
Like I don't want to represent it as being like, oh, a nice little house when that's not what it was.
And that's totally valid, right? And then it's like, well, how do you make sure it communicates like that, as opposed to kind of but that's the hard thing to communicate. But I think that makes sense. The only thing here that really is bothering me, and it shouldn't, like I'm trying to get my head around, no, it's okay, it's like when you write right on the front of the house, or the top, like where it says kids room, and video games, and what's that one saying?
It's like partial back.
Like the one that's partial isn't as annoying. Up is fine, like on the side it seems fine,
Right.
But when it's just front and center presenting itself in that way, there's something that truncates something and I can't get beyond it. Also, the idea between a suitcase and a box, I like that. That's the connection. How do you guys like our logo? Awesome. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are like screen printed on.
So there's a lot of attention to detail.
I really wanted to print them directly on the box, but I'm using a go-go. It's a little plastic thing that on a hinge, and I couldn't put the box in it because it's like it's meant for paper for like small hard.
Japanese thing?
Yeah. So like I literally couldn't make it print on it, so I had to get the paper to be able to have the logo without looking like it was just pasted on there.
Yeah, but I think this is pretty spectacular.
I would love to see something in the, I mean, you know, if you're moving house all the time, you're not gonna have, but maybe some like little movie boxes in the house, or something like maybe an heirloom hanging on the wall, or something that's, you know, always present in your room.
No, I was gonna make like little like furniture, and I ran out of time.
Well, and let's talk about that, because there's a suggestion. Like, there's the idea of suggestion, and then there's the idea of giving us the thing, right? And I think if you go too far with stuff, you truncate my thoughts. So I would be a little careful. Like, I actually think that they turn out good.
I was just gonna put like one small thing, like one chair, or like a
Like one
little
little
table, like one.
That moves with each box?
That would be crazy.
Yeah, well, this is like, does it move or does it stay? How about the sound? So we heard, huh? You like all of the sounds? You remember? I like all of the sounds. The rocking chair one is a little,
Like everybody knows the sound.
uh-huh.
It's something that, I don't know, I didn't even process what I was like, what's going on? Until somebody said, oh, it's a rocking chair. And I was like, oh.
Was that also in the thing with video games? Was the rocking chair sound like the video game?
Which one is rocking chair?
Oh.
Rocking chair is that one.
I think it was the front.
Yeah.
The video game, yeah. So
Because I
it's
was,
a
like,
video
trying to
game.
sound
And I
like
heard a
video
rocking
games,
chair.
like,
I was
trying to
expecting to hear like some like beep boops and no, it's interesting.
I actually like made the houses and just when that's the one thing I would have done better is the things that I wrote on it. Because when I was finishing them up, I was just like, okay, what are things that like you would have on boxes, and I just wrote random stuff. But then I realized like this one, especially kids' room, this is the one with like the arguments.
No, yeah, that was.
Well, that one, well, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, that becomes much more poignant. It's like the little kids.
I just wish the argument was like better than what it is. But I was using like 3 sounds. I needed like.
And remember that these are all alterable,
Yes.
right? There's one other thing I'm gonna say too. First of all, like trying to find the path is a little difficult, not hard.
Yeah.
When they explain it.
Initially, I had a wall here, but then with the addition of the LED, so like you wouldn't be able to put it anywhere other than here initially, and then we cut off that first wall, so that it could now it can do this, and then it doesn't work, and I'm like, oh crap. But I was hoping that like the square would help.
Yeah, and is there a little way to like put bumpers so you don't have to go to like the tiny little bumper?
Maybe if you have like one page
Like
in the front.
Yes, I could put something there.
Just something to kind of clue the viewer in, or the listener or the interactor in. Like, and that sound I think floats a bit. Like, I'm not like, is it a haunted house? Is it a rocking chair?
Yes.
Is it sad? Is it close? I don't know what's going on there exactly.
Right.
And then the other thing, I would just watch when you have these doors, the wall comes out of the window.
Yeah.
And so, stay with us, stay with us. So if you're being really, really anal about the whole thing, all the walls are kind of come out of the window. But, I would love to see you, I want to see senior show, definitely. Maybe senior show a little too. Your door has a slit, that's all the way. All right, so congratulations.